Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Beis. We'll begin Daf Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. We're holding in the middle of the machlekes of Rav Yeshua and Rav Eliezer. Rav Yeshua says, the pasuk says, "V'asisa onesecha basar v'adam." So Rav Yeshua says that im ein dam ein basar, im ein basar ein dam. That if the basar is tamei, if you can't place and burn the basar on the mizbeach, you cannot do the avodah. You can't do the zrikas dam, and vice versa. And Rav Eliezer says no, that even if the basar is tamei, you could. Now Rav Yeshua brings a riot from the fact that it says basar v'adam. Rav Eliezer brings a riot from the end of the pasuk, says that because the pasuk says v'dam zvachecha yishafech, and it only says dam and it doesn't say basar. So for the Gemara of Rav Yeshua, Nami Aksiv v'dam zvachecha yishafech. How does he understand that part of the pasuk where it says that only the dam and it doesn't say the basar? Amar lach, he'll tell you Aksiv gabei, but it says next to it v'basar toichel. It says right next to it v'basar toichel, which means to say that they are connected. That it's only if you can eat the meat then that you can do the shlich of the dam. More of a honey tray kroy lamli. So we accept that answer, but lamaisa we have two psukim that are telling you the same thing, that we link together the basar and the dam. That when there's basar, there's dam. When there's dam, there's basar. And you can only do the zrika if the basar is tor that can be burnt on the mizbeach. Why do we need two psukim? More answers. One is reference to the oila, and one is reference to the korban shlomim. I need to tell me in both of these cases that applies. It applies in both of these cases. And from these two, I can learn out to the rest of the korbanos. Utzricha. And I needed both by oila and shlomim. Because the Rachmana boila, if it only written by the oila, I would have said havamina oila huda chamira. I would have thought that I have this chumra, that I have to have basar and dam and basar. That's only by an oila which is chomer. Shekain kolil, because it's burnt completely on the mizbeach. Al shlomim delei chamiri, but shlomim which does not have that chumra, it's not completely burnt on the mizbeach. Only the emurim are burnt on the mizbeach, but the basar is eaten. So I might have thought that, therefore, we don't have to link the two together. Because of Rahman Shlomim, if it only said Shlomim, I would have said Havamina, these Beshtei Achilas. I might have said that Shlomim has its own chumrah, that there are two separate types of Achila. There's the Achila Mizbeach, but there's also the mitzvah of Achilas Odam, that people eat the meat. So therefore, I would say that this connection, that it has to be linked, is only by Shlomim. Aval oila the less Beshtei Achilas, which does not have that, Emuloi Kamash Malan. That's why I have to, the Torah has to write it in both places. It has to write it twice to refer to both oila and Shlomim. Rav Eliezer, Nami Aksiv v'basar toichel. Rav Eliezer, however, he learned out from that part of the pasuk where the pasuk says that v'dam zvachecha yishafech, that it only says dam. He learned out that we don't link the two, that you don't need the basar. It doesn't have to be tor. But Rav Yeshua has a good taina because it says next to it v'basar toichel. So we see that it is linked. Amrullah Rav Eliezer will tell you how when we boile that it says the basar toichel to teach you she'ena basar muter b'achila ad she'izarek adam. That's telling you a different halacha, that you can only eat the meat. The meat is only muter b'achila. It's only after the zrikas adam. So first is that you have to do the zrik of the dam. So first the pasuk says that. The meaning of it is said the dam zvachecha yishafech, and then v'basar, and then the basar taichel, and then you eat the meat. It's telling you that this is the order of it, that it comes that first the zrika and then the basar. It's only muter b'achila after the zrika. Frank tomorrow, well, that's a starker point, but if so, well, maybe that's the entirely coming to teach us this. And how does the Rebbe learn out that dam, even if there's no basar? Now he learns out from that even if the basar is tamei, you can still do the zrikas hadam. But if I need this limit over here to teach me that first the zrika, then the eating of the basar, how do I know? How can I learn out that you can do the zrika even if the basar is tamei? So if that's the case, that is how do I know that? He'll answer, if that's so, that if it's only that he teach you that first you do the zrika and then you can eat the basa, if it's not for this additional limud as well, if so, then the order should be that habasa teichel, and then it should say it should write it in that order. Like it says in the beginning, it says that if it says in the beginning, it says habasar vasiso is the first basar and then dam. So to be consistent, it should say also in this part of the pasuk, in the latter part, it should say that dam. It should say babasar teichel, first mention the basar and then the dam. The dam zvachecha yishafech. Why is it that in the end of the pasuk, that in the latter part of it, that it's makdem the dam? It says first dam. Shema mina dam afal basar is telling you dam zachar. You can do the shichas dam. You can do the zrika even if there's no basar, and because it doesn't mention basar. And then afterwards, after it mentions that, then by mentioning abasar teichel is to tell you this second din as well. So we can learn out both dinim from here. Now that Rabbi Yeshua, who says that no, we need that the abasar teichel is to link the dam and basar. So according to Rabbi Yeshua, where does he learn out this halacha that the basar is not mutabachila until the zrika is done? The zrika sadam has to come first. Rabbi Yeshua ain't a basar mutabachila chizorag adam kal v'chaymer. He says we don't have to learn it out from the pasuk. It's a kal v'chaymer. Uma emura madach emura, which are burnt on the mizbeach. The chilas no loy ma'akev. If they're not back, if we don't have them, if they're not in existence, rather, then if they're gone, if they're disappeared, lost, it's not makiv. It's not makiv the korban. The korban's kosher even without the aktaras emurim. The aktaras emurim is a mitzvah, but kilas no, if they're not in existence, it's not makiv the korban. But kiyas no makiv. But where they are in existence, they are makiv, and therefore when they are not in existence, the korban is kosher, and it's not makiv the chila. However, if they are in existence, then they are ma'akev the achila, and you can't eat it until you're makdir the emurim. So dam the chiles ma'akev, the dam, the blood, the zrika on the mizbeach of the blood, that it is ma'akev chiles, even if it's not in existence, the korban is possible. So the meat is possible. You can't eat the meat from the korban. So the dam is more chomer. It's more of a ma'akev. Then it's by the dam. If you do not do the zrikas dam, you can't eat the basar at all. So it's more ma'akev. It's more chomer. Ki isa lo kol shkein the ma'akev. So when it's in existence, certainly it should be ma'akev. The emurim is only ma'akev the achila, the eating of the basar when it's in existence. And then you have to be maktir the emurim first before you can eat the basar. But if it's not in existence, then you could eat the basar. The dam, without the zrikas dam, the korban is possible. So whether it's in existence or not, you can't eat the basar without the dam. So certainly over there you can't eat the basar before the zrikas dam. Rabbi Lezer says yes, he agrees it's a kal v'chaymer. Rabbi Milsa dasi b'kal v'chaymer tarach v'kasav lakra. He says nevertheless the pasuk is coming to teach us this, because we find cases that even though something could be learned out from a kal v'chaymer, but the Torah makes a point to teach it to us explicitly. And over here, that's what the Torah is doing. It's teaching us this halacha, even though we could have learned it out from a kal v'chaymer. Nevertheless, the Torah wants to teach us to us explicitly. Rabbi Yeshua says no, we don't say that rule. If there is a possible drasha, then we do darshan it. We only say if there is no other drasha, so we are forced to say that the Torah is writing it to teach it to us explicitly. But here Yeshua says we have a drasha. We have a drasha to link the two together, that im ein basar, ein dam, and therefore we will learn it out of a kal v'chomer and not say that the pasuk is coming for this. So hashda lema masnisin to loik Rabbi Yeshua. So now that we've established what Rabbi Yeshua's shita is, let us say therefore that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yeshua. Why is that? Because the cave and dome are being untied. Because since Rabbi Yeshua says we need both parts of the korban, we need the blood and we need the basar, we need the dam and we need the basar. They're interconnected. And also vitzitz achilas le'meratza, and the tzitz cannot be meratza for that which is burnt on the mizbeach, for that which is eaten. So therefore, heiche also betuma. So how can it be that you can bring the korban betuma? How can you bring the korban betuma? If you must have the basar in order to do the zrikas adam, and if the tzitz is not meratza on the achilas, and if it's tuma dechuya b'tzibur, not huta b'tzibur, so now our Tana says that these korbanos are brought betuma. How can you bring the korban betuma? The more answers, afilu tema Rabbi Yeshua. No, you could say our Mishnah is Rabbi Yeshua. And we're changing our understanding. Now we're holding, Elakasavar Rabbi Yeshua, tzitz meratza al oilin. That what is the tzitz not meratza on? The tzitz is not meratza on the basar, but it is meratza on the oilin, on the emurim that are burnt on the mizbeach. So as far as the emurim are concerned, the tzitz is meratza, and therefore it doesn't interfere with the zrikas adam. It doesn't interfere with the bringing of the korban akrov. And therefore, since the tzitz is meratza on the oilim, even though Rabbi Yeshua says you must have the basar to do the zrikas adam, imein basar ein dam, but as long as, according to our understanding right now, as long as you have one component of it, at least the imurim, then you could do the zrikas adam. So since the tzitz is meratza on the imurim, at least to the extent that, not that you can put it and burn on the mizbech, but at least that it's considered that it is present, that you have it, it doesn't interfere with the zrika. So therefore you can do the zrikas adam. Well, that's fine by zvachim, where you have imurim that are burnt on the mizbeach. But by the minchas ha'omer and the shtei alechem, you don't have that which is burnt on the mizbeach. Now, even though it's true that by the mincha you have the kaimetz, which is burnt on the mizbeach, and that is, but that's in the mincha that corresponds to the zrikas adam by the zavach. But aside from what's the zrika, by the zvachim you have the zrika and you have the imurim. By the mincha you have the kaimetz, which corresponds to the zrika, but aside from that you don't have anything that's burnt on the mizbeach, and the shtei alechem you don't have what's burnt on the mizbeach. So therefore, what are you going to have over there to say that you can bring it betuma? You don't have what's put on the mizbeach. So as far as that concerned, there's no part of the mizbeach. Then how could it be brought betuma? Now, Bishlam, according to Rabbi Lezer, who says that tzitz is zaratz al oichlim, then we understand. But according to Rabbi Yeshua, if he's saying that the tzitz is not maratz al oichlim, and over here there are no imurim, so how could it be brought betuma? And our Tana says that it is brought betuma. I'm reading more answers. Ki Amar Rabbi Yeshua nami debina tate. Where did Rabbi Yeshua say they need both parts, the basar and the dam? That's bezvachim. That's only bezvachim. B'menachas loy amar. He didn't say it by menachas, therefore it doesn't apply by menachas. And as long as the kaimetz is right to the mizbeach, that's sufficient. Frag the Gemara of menachas loy amar. He didn't say it regarding menachas. Did he not say it? Well, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah nitmu of the shireha, if the remainder of the korban became lost, now or became tomei before the kaimetz was burnt on the mizbeach. So if the leftover after the kaimetz, the remainder of the mincha, that's called the shiarayim. So he said that nitmu shi'areha, if the remainder became tamei or lost before they were makriv the kaimetz, so kemidas Rabbi Eliezer kshera. According to Rabbi Eliezer, it's kosher because they're not intertwined. But kemidas Rabbi Yeshua psula, but according to Rabbi Yeshua it's psula. So you see that he said his din that by menachas as well that they're interconnected. More answers kemidas or like kemidas, like the meter of Rabbi Yeshua, but not exactly. Kemidas Rabbi Yeshua, the entirety that he said you need both parts be kosher. Both parts have to be valid. But like Kemidas Rabbi Yeshua, but not exactly according to Rabbi Yeshua. Dila Rabbi Yeshua v'zvachim amar b'menachos le'amar, because Rabbi Yeshua himself only said it by zvachim, not b'menachos. Vil hai tana, but this tana holds savar afil b'menachos. So, for the Gemara, how can you say that? Umano haitana the kaika v'aseh machat semine. Who's this tana? We didn't find such a tana that holds like him and is machmar even more than him. So, to suggest that there's this tana, it's not likely. We don't find such a tana. V'ay tana, we learned the Brisa Amar Rabbi Yosi, Raya Ani Estivre, Rabbi Eliezer v'nachsav v'zvachim. He says, I agree. It seems to me, I understand what Rabbi Eliezer says by menachas and zvachim v'divrei Yeshua b'zvachim of menachas. So now, this statement the Gemara we'll see later on. The Gemara will explain exactly what this means because it's very perplexing. What does it mean? He sees what he agrees to, understands what Rabbi Eliezer says. B'menachas zvachim and Yeshua b'zvach menachas. But upon him, for our purposes right now, before we explain it, we'll prove over here that Rabbi Yeshua says his din even by menachas. So the more it continues, Div Rabbi Eliezer b'zvachim shayom radam afal pi shein balsam. He says that if the blood is tar, is kosher, even though the meat is not. And the Divrei Yeshua b'zvachim and Divrei Yeshua b'zvachim shayomer imein dam in balser ein dam. And Rabbi Yeshua says that they're connected. So again, it's very perplexing, but the Gemara will explain it later. But Al Kolponim, you see that he says a roya Divrei Yeshua that imein balser and imein dam ein balser ein dam. And Divrei Rabbi Eliezer b'menachas shaya imer kaimetz afal pi shein shirayim. He says if the kaimetz is kosher, even though the shirayim are not, it's kosher. And the Rabbi Yeshua b'menachas shayarmim ein kaimetz, ein shirayim, ein kaimetz. So you see that Rabbi Yeshua says his din even by menachas. So before we explain what this means over here, the Gemara says, explaining now Rabbi Yeshua, Ella, again we're revising our understanding of Rabbi Yeshua, Ella Kasav Rabbi Yeshua, Hatzitz Meratza, Ala Oilin, Vala Achilas. That the tzitz is Meratza, it is Meratza both on Oilin and Achilas. And therefore, the tzitz is Meratza, and therefore the Oimer Shtei Lechem, even though there's no way Murem, but it's Meratza on Oichlim. If that's so, Amai Kemidas Rabbi Yeshua Psula, then why did the Mishnah say previously that according to Rabbi Yeshua that it would be possible that if the Shiraim became Tomei, that the korban is possible? Why should it be possible? If he says that tzitz is Maratza, then why should it possible it? Mora says it's going on Avod Asorov. It's not going on a case of Tuma, it's going on a case of Avod Asorov. It's going on Avod Asorov where it's no longer here. It's destroyed, it's lost. So over there, you don't have the Shiraim. If you don't have the Shiraim, then according to Rabbi Yeshua, since they're linked together, then you cannot be marked to the Kaimetz. But if it's here, but Tomei, then the tzitz would be Meratza. For the Gemara, Ela Nitma Leman Katani. Well, if that's the case, the Tana talks about the Tumah of the Shiraim by the Mincha. According to which Tana is he teaching us this? Rabbi Eliezer, if you're going to say Rabbi Eliezer, well, Pshita. According to Rabbi Eliezer, it's poshut that this is going to be kosher, because Hashni Yesh Lamar Ovid V'Sorov to listen to Maksha Rabbi Eliezer Madach in a case where it's Ovid V'Sorov, it's lost, it's burnt, it's non-existent. Yet Rabbi Eliezer, nevertheless, is Maksha Nitma Disami Boya, where it's told me that it exists. Certainly, it'll be kosher. So it can't be for Rabbi Eliezer. It'll Pshita Rabbi Yeshua. It must be to tell the sheet of Rabbi Yeshua. Uktana Psula, and it says that it's possible. So we see that according to Yeshua, the tzitz is not meratza. You see that the tzitz is not meratza for it, even in a case of tumah. Void Tanya, we learn in the Brayser Rabbi Yeshua calls Zachar Shabbatayra, Bein Shendit Medbasa v'Chelev Kayim, whether the meat is Tomei and the chelev of the fat is Kayim, it exists. Ubein Shendit Mechelev Ubasa Kayim, or whether the chelev became Tomei and the Basa exists, Zerigas Adam. He can do the Zerigas Adam. But if both of them became Tomei, you cannot. I'll make a Sava Rabbi Yeshua, Einatzitz Meratza al Oilin, Einatzitz Meratza al Oilin, Veloy al Achilas. Therefore, you see over here that he holds that it's not Meratza, neither on the Oilin and neither on the Achilas, on neither one of them. Because if the tzitz was ratza on any one of them, then you should be able to be marked with the korban. But it says that the bein shenitma basar v'chelev kaim, bein shenitma chelev basar kaim, it can be zorek, which we make a diuk that if they both became tamei, you can. Well, if the tzitz is meratza on either one of them, even only on one of them, then you should be able to do the zorek the dam. So therefore, it can't be that Rabbi Yeshua holds that the tzitz is meratza on the tumah. Then how is it that you would be able to, how would we say rather that it's possible that you can't do the avodah? Ella, the Gemara says, Lo elam Rabbi Yeshua, rather we say that no. We could say that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yeshua. Our Mishnah could be like Rabbi Yeshua. Well, if that's the case, then how could it be that if it's Tomei, that you can do the Avodah? Rabbi Yeshua says that they're linked together, that the Basar and the Dam are linked together, and the Tzitz is not Meratza. Our answer is, nevertheless, it could be Rabbi Yeshua like Kashekan Lechatchila. Rabbi Yeshua says this when he says that it's not meratza and you can't do the avodah. That's l'chadchila. Kan di'evet. But b'di'evet, if the person is the kind did the avodah, then b'di'evet it is kosher. Ki amar Rabbi Yeshua l'chadchila. When the Rabbi Yeshua said that he cannot do the avodah, that's l'chadchila. But the Eved loy, but after the fact, but the Eved, if the Kohen did the Avodah, the korban is a kosher korban. Next, throughout the next summit, we'll see where we prove that Rabbi Yeshua makes this chilik between the Chadchila and the Eved.